Unlocking skills and high-level movements in calisthenics is not just about muscle size and strength. What's holding you back may just be something you haven't thought about: your tendons. See, tendon strength is directly linked to athletic performance, and especially in calisthenics where they're constantly under pressure. Yet a lot of people don't train for it. They think it happens automatically as your muscles get stronger. And that's not necessarily true. They react only to a specific type of training, and even then they develop a lot slower. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks before any changes at all. So whenever you start a new skill or movement, there's a danger zone, especially if you're a beginner gaining strength quickly while your tendons remain as the day you started, and that's when injuries happen. Luckily, building stronger tendons is actually really simple, and research gives us some clear guidelines to follow. First off, tendons mainly respond to heavy lifting and they need a lot more time under tension. About 3 full seconds per repetition seems to be optimal, so either by pausing or simply slowing down the movement, and this has created the following guidelines. First, you want to work at 70 to 90% of your max capacity, and then you want to do about 3 to 6 very controlled reps, or hold yourself statically for an isometric hold. Now this of course is a measure made for weightlifting, but the point is still pretty clear. We need something demanding under full control. So a lot of push-ups is great for muscle mass and strength, but each rep is lighter in nature, and for that it won't do much for your tendons. On the other hand, it can be so heavy that you end up burning out. Most of the studies work at around 70% because it's enough to be efficient, but not too draining to keep up. Now let's see how it translates to calisthenics. Option 1, the basics. The most direct way to apply the principles is through the basics, like pull-ups and dips. Doing 3 to 6 controlled reps can pretty readily be applied, and to optimize time under tension, we have 2 good options. The first is to slow down the eccentric, which is the way down. For example, counting 3 full seconds as you descend in a dip before pressing back up again. The second one is to add an isometric element, simply doing an intentional pause and holding the movement still for a few seconds before continuing. 3 or 4 sets of tendon-focused work twice or even once a week will make a difference. And for most people, the adjustments often make it difficult enough. In fact, you likely have to add a resistance band to even complete the reps early on. But eventually, as you get stronger, the next step here is adding extra weight. This allows you to keep the fixed rep range and precisely work with percentages of your 1 rep max. But you still have to be careful. From my experience, the period where you transition from bodyweight to weighted calisthenics is the most critical for your tendons. Because when you first begin, that's when you make the quickest progress, adding more weight almost every week. It's fun and addictive, but it also creates a high risk situation. Remember, tendons take 6 to 8 weeks to undergo structural changes, so you can spend 2 months overloading with your tendons still unprepared. Of course, if you're advanced, the progress in that period is somewhat limited, but as a beginner you'll make some serious jumps, and if you're concerned about your tendons lagging behind or even feeling some pain, what I recommend is a consolidation phase. This involves estimating your 1 rep max, following the 70% rule, and keeping that weight fully constant for at least a 6-week period. Even if you feel stronger and could create a heavier strain, doing it too early simply comes with the risk of injury. And by staying at a weight you know your body can handle, you build the baseline to progress aggressively afterwards. Now I will mention that if your main goal is doing high reps, you won't need tendon strength as much, but it can still make sense to do these controlled sets every once in a while if you at some point want to test your limits and weighted calisthenics. Option 2, skill training. Following the guidelines, most skills and especially statics are great for building tendon strength. Holds directly classify as demanding isometrics, and certain power moves such as presses and slow muscle ups provide high intensity under full control. In some ways it's perfect, but it also means constant heavy pressure on your tendons, and in many cases you end up training them all the time, especially since there's a lot of overlap in calisthenics. Different skills straining the same tendons, around the biceps in particular, and that's problematic because tendons don't have the same blood flow muscles do, so they need more time to recover. You can still keep training if you go lighter, but if you keep pushing the hardest variations, your tendons will stay damaged even if your muscles feel fresh. Of course, the challenge is that doing it in moderation is not easy. Skills are not only demanding, they're also difficult to measure with percentages or exact intensity. We can quickly end up doing too much too fast. So for this, I won't just offer you more exercises. I'll say that even though statics in particular is amazing for tendon strength, the most important thing is going hard only in short bursts. A few sets every workout, and then spending most of your training using more controlled progressions. Alternatively, to get in some structure, you can also alternate between doing a hard session and a light session, which I like doing myself. And if you find yourself progressing quickly as a beginner, consider doing a consolidation phase. At least 6 weeks of only controlled progressions before pushing the limits. Again, even if shorter holds are optimal and create a heavier strain, it also carries more risk. And doing that period with longer, slightly less demanding holds will prepare your tendons without overworking them. And then you start chasing the harder variations. That way it actually becomes one of the best training styles for tendon strength. And I think that's extremely interesting, because statics are never considered optimal for muscle gain, but here the heavy isometric tension is optimal. And I think that's an underrated reason why these high-level athletes are so incredibly strong. Now, if you want my complete programs to train for skills and aesthetics, I have that linked in the description. And before ending the video, I also quickly want to mention that if you're looking for some new calisthenics equipment, my sponsors at Carnation have some very high quality options. You can use my code JACOB10 for 10% off. I've put the link in the description. That was it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.